In this video, I would like to talk about 4 beginner mistakes a lot of people do in astrophotography. Not only beginners, but also professional astrophotographers who have been doing this hobby for a few years now. These are mistakes that will limit your results in astrophotography. Therefore, definitely make sure to watch this entire video so that you do not make these mistakes in astrophotography. Mistake number 1 is about collimation. So if you're using an Newtonian telescope, it's very important that you collimate your telescope. So collimation means aligning the optical components of your telescope. So in those Newtonian telescopes, there are 2 mirrors, and collimation means aligning those 2 mirrors to get sharp images in deep sky astrophotography. When talking to beginners in astrophotography, they often say that they only collimate their telescope once a year, and that's definitely not enough. So definitely, when using a Newtonian telescope for astrophotography, definitely check the collimation every time you plan to use that Newtonian telescope. And if the collimation is not good, definitely collimate your Newtonian telescope. That's definitely a mistake a lot of astrophotographers do in astrophotography. And when your telescope is not collimated correctly, then your stars will not be that good, and in general the images will not be that sharp. So definitely make sure to check the collimation of your telescope every time you plan to capture the night sky. Mistake number 2 is about the place where you set up your telescope. So a lot of astrophotographers set up their telescope in their garden, and there is grass, for example. But that's definitely a problem in astrophotography because the equipment we are using is quite heavy, and if we're setting up that heavy equipment on that grass, there might be the problem that our telescope might sink in the grass. And this in general is definitely a problem. So on the one hand, we do the polar alignment process in the beginning of our astrophotography session, and if our telescope is sinking or moving in the course of the night, that will change the polar alignment process. So our mount is not centered on Polaris anymore. And on the other hand, it's a problem because we're tracking the night sky, and if our telescope is moving, we'll get star trails in our final results. So these are 2 problems. So when you plan to set up your telescope in your garden, and if there's grass, definitely make sure to put stones on the ground and then just set up your telescope on that stone. So that's something I'm doing, and since doing that, I've no problems with the telescope sinking into the grass. So that's definitely a big tip I would like to give to you. Mistake number 3 is about balancing. So when using a mount, it's very important that you balance your entire setup. Especially when using heavy equipment such as a heavy Newtonian telescope, it's very important that you balance your telescope correctly. So if your telescope is not balanced the right way, it's very hard for your mount to track the night sky correctly. And that might result in a lot of star trails in our final results, and that's definitely something we do not want to have when capturing images of the night sky. So we get star trails in our final results and our images will be not that sharp, and that's definitely a problem. So definitely make sure to balance your telescope correctly, because then it's easier for your mount to track your entire setup, and then you will get better images of the night sky because you will get sharp images without star trails. Mistake number 4 is about the power. So when using a setup like mine, for example, say an auto-guiding system, a camera, and mount, you need a lot of power, especially when using a cool dedicated astronomy camera. You need a lot of power to power that entire setup. And it's very important that your power supply has enough power for your entire setup. So perhaps one power supply might not be enough for your entire setup. So because if your setup does not have enough power, your mount, for example, might not track correctly because there's not enough power for the mount to track correctly, and therefore you will get star trails in your final results. So that's a problem I had in the beginning, for example. So in the beginning I used one power supply, and unfortunately that was not enough power, and therefore the tracking of the mount was not that good. But after attaching a second power supply, everything went quite according to plan, and finally my mount worked the way it should work. And since then I had no problems with tracking and with my entire setup. So these are the 4 mistakes I would like to share with you. So a lot of people out there make these mistakes, and therefore it was very important for me to share these mistakes with you so that you do not make these mistakes. If you know any other mistakes a lot of astrophotographers make, definitely make sure to write these down below in the comments, because that will definitely help other astrophotographers in that amazing hobby. If this guide and these mistakes were helpful to you, I would really appreciate a like and a subscription. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, clear skies, Felix.